Welcome to the LDN Perspective. My name's Cam, and I'm in the studio. Well, I'm recording today over a video link with my friends. You want to introduce yourselves?
I'm Ali.
I'm Kojo.
And Mo here.
Yeah, and this is episode 47 today, where we're going to be talking about the new practices, the new landscape for work in terms of how people have adjusted to working remotely. And we know, obviously, during this COVID-19 crisis, the lockdown in place, a lot of businesses have had to adjust. Well, a lot of businesses have adjusted to new working practices, i.e. that means working remotely. So a lot more people are working from home. Obviously, there are some jobs that are just, are set up in such a way that one can't even work from home, and it requires you to have some form of face-to-face contact. And so the basis of today's conversation really is to sort of have a roundtable discussion about how working practices have changed for all of us, how we've become accustomed to it, and what challenges, if any, that we faced getting used to that. So I guess I want to open the floor up and just sort of start off with saying, like, what sectors does everyone work in? And just sort of, does anyone want to start off as to how things have changed in those particular sectors? I mean, I'm happy to start off and go with what's changed for me, but maybe open the floor to you up.
Yeah, go ahead, Cam. I think some of the changes you got are really interesting.
Cool. So for me, I work in the legal profession. I'm a criminal lawyer, and for me, what has changed is the majority of my work requires face-to-face contact. I have to attend police stations, and I attend courts to represent people, and obviously that requires a lot of face-to-face contact. However, because of the risk of COVID-19, and I guess the idea is, whatever risk COVID-19 places now, it will still be here in November, it will still be here in December, it will still be here in January. The only thing that's going to help it, obviously, is if a vaccine comes into place or there's some form of medication that can treat it. And as the things have been reported in the news, that's very unlikely to be the case, at least by January next year. So going long term, in terms of the work I do, what has happened is the police and the London Criminal Solicitors Association, they've created a protocol where now interviews that are conducted by the police are done so remotely. So either they're done over a virtual link through Microsoft Teams, or interviews have been conducted over a telephone. So where I used to be able to obviously attend police stations and speak to clients, now I'm having to speak to them over a telephone. So I'm getting disclosure, which is information about the allegation from a police officer over a telephone, and then I'll speak to a client over a telephone link as well. And usually it'll have to be a secure telephone link that won't be monitored. And then when the interview takes place, I'll have to listen in to the interview through a telephone link. Sometimes that can be done over Microsoft Teams, though I haven't done anything with Microsoft Teams yet. However, with the challenges I've probably faced in respect of that is, what I will say is, for the most part, they've been running smoothly, but I would say one of the challenges of representing someone in a police station interview is it's important to be there, like, sort of in a physical sense, to physically be there, because if I need to challenge a police officer on their manner of questioning, their conduct, how they've a particular question they've asked, I find it much more effective to do that if I'm there in person than if I'm not. I feel like if I'm on a phone or even on a video link, I don't think any challenge I make can be as effective as it would be if I were there in person. And for the most part, for clients as well, I think it can be quite comforting to have someone sitting there next to them. It gives them some form of reassurance. So I would say that's a challenge I faced in that. I haven't done any court hearings yet, but from what I understand, the courts have closed to all types of people that are to all bail hearings. So if someone's on bail for a criminal case, they've been told not to attend court until further notice. I also know the Crown Courts have adjourned all jury trials, and that's until further notice as well. And I think what's being done now is that they're looking into possibilities as to how they could adjust to dealing with virtual hearings, so hearings on video links, and that's certainly definitely going to change the landscape of how criminal matters are dealt with. I guess in the long term, there's going to be a massive shift in how you conduct hearings, in how you deal with advocacy. Although I haven't experienced that yet, I'm yet to see what changes that will do for the landscape going forward for law firms adjusting to that. So I would say that's probably some of the challenges I've faced in my field. What I also will say is, because I'm a freelancer, a lot of the work I did was for firms outside of like social hours and all that sort of stuff, and that's work that required you to actually attend police stations. And so if you get a case or call at like 1 or 2 in the morning and someone needs to attend a police station, obviously some firms just don't want to, they don't want to leave their houses at that particular time. They'll get an agent to cover it. But now that everything's been done on video links and through telephones, there's probably no need to get an agent to go and cover it, because you can just deal with the interview in the comfort of your own home.
How secure are these communications anyway, in terms of the client privilege and all of that?
I mean, they're just as secure as I guess secure in the sense that you don't have an officer sitting in the cell when you're speaking to a client. They're not listening into the phone call, but that's as secure as I can say they are. Speaking to some of the clients on the phones I've spoken to, I mean, it's been on an officer's mobile phone. So an officer's called me on his mobile phone, or it may be a mobile phone that's assigned to him through his office, and then it's just passed it to the client. So in terms of how secure they are, I can't say, I can't give you a definitive answer as to how secure they are. All I can say is, insofar as me speaking to a client, I just know the officer's not there listening to what's being said.
Because I know when you call into like police stations and stuff, they basically transfer you over to the client, and obviously with a lawyer, that line is supposed to be secure. But let's say if a normal family member calls them, then they are listening to those phone calls. Is that right?
Yeah, they are. Yeah. So any communications you have with your lawyer usually are privileged. And so they're not to be listened to or monitored. And even if they are, that necessarily can't even be used as evidence against the client, because those conversations are supposed to be confidential anyway. But yeah, if someone in a police station is speaking to a family member, then they certainly will listen to those conversations, because I mean, in those instances, they're not sure. Someone will say something incriminating, or may tell a family member, let's say it's a violent crime and there's a victim out there, they might instruct that particular family member or friend to go and do something to the victim to make and get them to retract their statement. So there are instances in which they have to take put those measures in place to sort of protect the wider public, so to speak.
No, so they take those measures with the view that it's protecting the public, right? Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Because obviously, all those instances are not the same. It could be you're just having a conversation with your mum.
Of course, yes.
If you are in that police station and you are given that one phone call to make, if you're not contacting your solicitor, the police are listening.
You have to assume they're listening. And I'm not saying they listen to every single call, because it could be, I think it's sort of like it could be every other call, but you have to assume that they're always listening, because you could say something and then.
Is that not on the grounds of civil liberties though? I'll bring it back into the COVID conversation, so maybe I'll just leave it there. But I feel like that's a bit thin anyway.
And I did want to know, in terms of this whole communication, how is this affecting under 18s and minors?
Well, in fact, it's probably interesting you say that. I represented an under 17 a few weeks ago, and he had an appropriate adult, but they were at the station, so they were with the juvenile client, and I just spoke to them on the telephone. And as I said, insofar as how secure the line was, as I said, the most I can say is that the officer wasn't listening in. Obviously, I verified that with the client before I even spoke to them about their case or even gave them any advice. And in fact, first and foremost, before you're even doing those sort of things, you have to ask the client if they're happy to even take advice on the phone, because on one hand, yes, it's about protecting yourself, but it's also about the interests of that particular person in the station. They might not want to just take advice on the phone. They might physically want someone present. And if that client had said to me, I actually would prefer someone to be here, then I may have to pass that case on, and then someone would have to physically attend the station. Because although police have put in place this protocol, it's not widespread everywhere. Some stations are actually having people in, getting lawyers to attend the station and having people interviewed there.
Let's say I was a parent that was obviously concerned with this whole, in most recent times, of death in custody and have a young child or somewhere that's at a station. Is there any reassurance for those parents that may have that concern in terms of how a video call is, or would you personally probably say for them to get a lawyer to attend, or an adult or someone?
I guess for youth clients, it's a tricky one, because they have to be careful as to how they deal with them, because obviously that if things aren't done properly, there's always the risk of an abuse of the process. Any argument like that can come out later down the line, and so there has to be sort of a conscious effort to sort of ensure that things are done properly. I think with youth clients, I think if a parent came and had a concern, there are options for the police, and it also depends on the nature of the offence. Let's say it's like, let's say it's a petty theft offence, and the police, want to interview the person, but they might not be able to get an appropriate adult and so forth and solicit out. Then they've got the option of releasing the person on bail until there's an appropriate time that they can invite them back in to re-interview them. But let's say it's a serious case, like a serious GBH. In those cases, they're not going to just release the person on bail to come back to the station at another time. They would have to keep them in custody and deal with the case appropriately. In that instant, if a parent had concerns, and you need to understand is if someone on the age of 17 is at a station and the police are trying to get an appropriate adult at the station, the parent is the first point of call. That's the person they contact. But the parent can't or is unwilling to attend, then the next step is they have to contact social services and they can get a representative, or they contact a company called the Appropriate Adult Service, and they would just send us a representative to the station to represent the young person's interests as their appropriate adult. So, as I said, even if parents have concerns, there are other options for the police to pursue in terms of ensuring that that person's rights are upheld.
You mentioned about the active, that when you're physically not there, is the public aware of this?
What do you mean in terms of like?
So if someone is arrested, and obviously it takes a phone call or virtual reality or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if you as a solicitor, you're not physically there,
mm-hmm.
is the public are aware of what is happening in the body of the police department?
Well, there have been articles in the news about one solicitor died from COVID-19, which he caught at a police station. And so there have been articles about the risks surrounding COVID-19 in the station and PPE and obviously taking steps to protect yourself. So as far as the public are aware, there have been articles in the Law Gazette about remote interviews, but obviously I understand that the Law Gazette it's not a publication that the wider public read. So in terms of how much the public know about what's going on, I'm not even entirely sure. As I said, if I speak to a client on the phone, I will say to them, look, this is the situation going on with COVID-19. Now, I can continue to advise you and participate in the interview on the telephone or virtual link, but if you would prefer for someone to attend, you're entitled to that option. So if that's the case and you want someone to attend, then that would have to be arranged. Obviously, it won't be me attending, but arrangements will have to be made for someone to attend.
Okay, makes sense then.
So moving on from me, is anyone else? So Ali, obviously to move on to you. Obviously, I know you work in the construction industry. So start off, like, what changes have taken place with the lockdown of COVID-19 for you in terms of your working arrangements, and what's changed?
Well, my industry, first of all, I believe is one of the important industry in the economic. So we have stopped for a while, maybe about 3 or 4 weeks now. But moving forward, I think the government has announced that we are one of the necessity work environment that we need to go back. So some companies are initially starting to go back on the 11th of May. So that's in a week time or 2 weeks time. So the impact is severe because on site, you've got a micro level of sometimes under 100. You go max macro level of over 1,000 employees or staff or members on site. So on my side, on my case, I've got over 1,000 staff on site daily. So the procedure that's going to be taken on board is perhaps instead of 1,000 a day, perhaps it's probably 400 or maybe half of the 400, 200. So it will be like rotation. So maybe 200 this week, and then another 200 the next week, and so on. So, but there's a huge impact. There's a huge situation there as well, because as you know, on projects, or any project for that matter, whether it's small, whether it's a large, because I work on a large project, especially we've got a timeline program where we were supposed to finish roughly by end of this year. On December, I think it might just jump onto January, the earliest. Now, because of what has happened, we've missed almost about 6 or 8 weeks in terms of the program. So we're most likely to finish it next year, summer. So what will the impact will be on that? It will be cost, it will be the client side, and will be the individuals, like the subcontractors, whereby they've got their budget, they know what they need to do, and they can't fulfill it because obviously it affects the pace of it. And then you got manufacturers as well, where we can't physically get any deliveries or any materials on board on site, whether or not the individual subcontractors have their factory on board or within the premises. The point is that it can't go on site yet until procedure is taken on place. So that procedure will be taken on place will be the 2-meter distance, and it will be that sanitizers, making sure that it's on every single location, and it will making sure that the gates are freely open, and we need a lot of security as well. So in that sense, when you have like 2 meter on site, it's not really an effective way of doing it, because it's really hard to do it. Even though you have 200 people on site as a rotation, what I mentioned previously, it's still going to be very hard, because you got a canteen where you have to separate the canteen and allow this operative to be able to physically sit there and have their lunch. So what we do is we come up with an idea where instead of every single operative will come in 2 o'clock, for example, just an example, for lunch, 2 p.m. So what we decided was that we would talk to every subcontractors and say, okay, listen, I know the lunch is at 2 o'clock. Why don't you shift it around? Maybe 2, maybe another person 3, or maybe another person 1, or maybe another person 12. So instead of all coming in, we'll give a selective of maybe 4 or 5 subcontractors coming on site, and then the rest can go out, maybe in the park or anything to eat or something like that. So
sorry, go on. Now I was going to say, so in terms of your working arrangements, you actually haven't been into work, basically. That's what I'm getting. You haven't been in.
No, I haven't been in for a while now. Because I've been, obviously, of what have happened, the impact of it.
So in terms of when you go back, it will have to be tested. You're going to test it. A lot of the measures that were put in place will have to be tested first time round.
Yeah, exactly what I've just highlighted, because we have to put procedure in place to allow the situation to be norm again. But the question is it going to be norm? Because we on site, some people might have the symptoms but won't show it. So, and especially we have a lot of staff on site. So that's another issue with it as well. So the only solution is just to take precaution, to be frank, and then make sure that, because on site we do have full PPE. We have 5.4 PPE, and we can have up to 7.6 6.6 PPE, and that alone it will make sure that is taken in place. But it's just the other impact effects to it is just that the canteen and people going to the toilet, and then people maneuvering on site. And because the site which is the fortune about us, the site that I work in is huge. It's a massive site. So within the operative on site, it's not going to really have an impact, because it's so big that every operative can actually move around without touching each other. So which is the good part of it. It's just the other side, when you come to the office, that's when the impact will be. But we are taking in a situation. We are discussing it and making sure that there is procedures taken in place. Every subcontractors have to write down a new ramp, which is that's the ramp for the regulation of the COVID-19. Put that in place and follow the instruction with that as well. So that's another impact that we're going to put into that.
Okay. Yeah. I guess it's this. Go on, Coach.
Yeah. So Ali, I know some people that work in a construction kind of business, and I was aware about a week or 2 ago, some of them had to go back to work, and I just asked them what precautions have been, as you mentioned, some of the precautions. So I asked a question around some of the precautions that have been put in place, and maybe the work that they might be doing, obviously, is because they're more in the kind of like buildings. I don't know, painting, or I haven't asked specifically what they're doing. But I think what they've been mentioned as in there is some sort of like kind of distancing at the workplace, where if, like, let's say there's a building that's been made up and there's like 4 bedrooms, like each person could only be in one room at a time if they're doing a specific job. And yeah, so I think those were some of the stuff that they had to mention to me, that because of contractual obligations, some of the construction companies are having to let people come back into work and maybe put in some sort of social distancing in place. Are you aware of other companies that have kind of established that kind of just work in one room at a time kind of stuff? Or
yeah, correct. You're right, because on that aspect, what you just mentioned on each room, that's a residential projects that the person that they're working on. On my side, I'm working on commercial. So commercial space is usually an open space, which is huge. And because when I mentioned that it won't really have an impact on us because it's so open, and so that we can maneuver easily and obviously have the distance apart. But on a residential part of it, when you're working on that side of it, is that each room, for example, your mate that might be doing a deco, so he will come in. So this is where the program will take more effect, because the deco will come in, make sure that his area is done. Then the second fixing will come, which will be the electric, the M&E. He will come in and make sure that his area is done. And then you have the tape and dap. He will come in and make sure that it's done. So then what the advantage now, the principal contractor has now, which is the main contractor, the advantage that they have, they can see the program actually working. if you know what I mean, because sometimes subcontractor does not follow the program. So now it makes them to see, okay, this is what is happening, this is what needs to be done. So in a longer run, the project, instead of taking 6 months, will actually take 4 months and complete it very quicker, because when different subcontractors are coming in one room, right, it will allow the main contractor to move forward and obviously get the project done. Because before, the subcontractor won't follow the procedure, and then it will just drag on and drag on and drag on. But now it actually effective now for them, and then obviously allowing the project to go very quicker. But then it just depends on the main contractors and how they want to implement the idea. But yeah, you are right. You do on the room, you get the subcontractor coming, you get the deco coming, you get the painter coming. I mean, they get the electrician coming, you get the tape and dap coming, you get the flooring guy coming, and so on. But yeah, it's obviously they're following the procedure. Yeah, you're right.
So you're saying, Ali, that with this going on, basically there's more efficiencies to be gained now. So COVID-19 is bringing more efficiencies for those residential properties for the principal contract.
Absolutely, I believe so, because it's true.
You think they were dragging things out to try and make as much money as possible on these contracts?
Yeah. That's the main side of it. That's the main side.
I can imagine
that's why small businesses really fail.
Perspectives, different views, one voice.
Yeah. So Ali, as I was asking, I guess, I think the last thing we touched on was, it seems that obviously there's efficiencies that are being gained due to COVID-19. And I guess the other question I had is that you mentioned something. It seems that there's some sort of software, right, that they use to actually work out what activities need to happen for a specific building, who needs to go in next and stuff like that, I'm guessing.
Yeah, definitely. There is a program called Microsoft program. So then obviously that breaks it down to individuals of the program that need to be done. Like you've got, for example, so if you got 38 units, for example, which is like apartment residential. So within that 38 unit on the program, because sometimes you have the program planner that will put all of this down into writing, and then once they put that all into writing, then they will put that the planning into the core thing called Microsoft Planner. So they'll just sit down and put it all. So obviously, if they say to the principal contractor, the main contractor, and say, okay, the principal contractor, who is the client, and say, okay, we're going to finish this project 1 year and 8 months. So all of that will be implemented into that. So then they sit down and break it down, and then that will go in within flooring. If it's an RC frame, which is a new building, you'll go into the excavation, you'll go into all the raising of the floors, and you'll go into all the other part of the M&E, the painter, the deck, the tap and dap, and so on. It will just drag on. But then obviously they will carry on and leave it for a snagging area, like maybe 6 weeks snagging, or maybe 8 weeks snagging. But yeah, there is a program called Microsoft program that they do use on site, which helps.
Maybe just to bring this to a fin, I guess, in regards to the contractors, what's the benefit in dragging it out? So for instance, and let me just give an example. So I've given a quote to say this will take me 18 months. What will be the benefit? When we say dragging out, do we mean that I might drag it out so it lasts a full 18 months, even though I could finish it in 12 months? Is that what we mean? Or we drag it out outside the kind of like timeframes that I've given you? Does that make sense?
Yeah, the reason why you're dragging it out, just in case things can happen, whether it's in the terms of weather, you have to remind that weather can cause disruption to doing anything, whether or not work related or whether or not individual. So that's weather. And on top of that, sometimes the client does not have the money physically. So obviously they have to borrow money within a bank. That can also escalate within a program. And also sometimes the materials as you are getting on site, you don't have the money as well. That can fall into that as well. So you have to drag that on that as well. And sometimes when you're doing like a partition agreement, which is like a solicitor that will come in and then make sure that the partition agreement, that can cause another delay as well. So all of those factors we add on onto the time scale. So that's why when you're telling you as a client and say, coach, I'm going to do your project for you, but your project's going to take you 12 months, right? Realistically, your project can take a year. I'll just put that 2 months on top just in case anything that I've just mentioned cause any problem. You understand? So for me and you as a working relation, I can make sure that you as a client, you're happy, and then I can fulfill your requirement. So there won't be any issue. So then if in the future you want another project, because the fact that I have fulfilled your requirement, you will remember me and then obviously give me another project. So there's always a way that you have to make sure that you're very transparent with the client. That's what it is.
Now I fully understand, because I think, that regarding estimates, because I've been in situations where different parts of the businesses have come for specific estimates, and I normally give 3 estimates. I give the best case scenario, I give the actual scenario, and I give the worst case scenario. And I normally go with the worst case scenario. And as you mentioned, Ali, just to put some buffers in, just to make sure that if things doesn't go right, we still have enough time to fulfill those requirements. So I can understand why that is being done. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. It's interesting, because I guess for you, Ali, like your work, you just can't do it remotely, regardless of, what goes on. You certainly won't be able to even do it remotely. You have to be on site, from what I understand.
Yeah, you're right, definitely. And there's no way, whether or not what or this new norm or this new change is going to affect, it's not going to affect really us. However, the CEO or the directors, they're most likely to affect them. They can work remotely because physically they don't have to be on site.
Sure.
It's just the managers, the project managers, or the site managers, or the supervisor, or the logistic managers, or the operative. They're the one that have to be on site. But the CEO or the directors don't have to. They usually come in once in a week on site, making sure that site is running nicely, and talk to the client, the main contractors, that they're happy that what they are providing on site is going to according to the program. But in hindsight, for example, on my side, because of what I do, I'm working on site. In a way, I don't have to be on site, but the reason why I have to be on site, there's a fundamental side of what I'm going to have to say, and I'm sure people that are working in the construction now understand this. It's called the health and safety side of it. So the health and safety side of it is a very important thing that United Kingdom, when it comes to the NHSB, they are very important people on site. So what I mean by the health and safety is that if, for example, on my title, I'm supervising over 20 people on site, and then anything goes wrong, for example, they cut their finger or they get hurt, they're being hurt, because they're not physically, they don't have the first aid, which is first aid is like as if like when something goes wrong, I'm the one that have to make sure that I'm present, and then write a report and make sure that it's all fine and good. If it's something that is severe, I can't deal with, then I have to immediately contact the ambulance on site. They have to come. So then the main contractor, they will want a report. So when they have that report, it will make sure that they have covered themselves. So if the health and safety people, for example, they come on site within 6 months and then saw the situation, they've heard about the situation, but it's not on file, what will happen? The main contractor, they will be sued. And when they will be sued, it will be a hefty fine of over £1 million. So they don't want that to happen. So that's why when a contractor, a subcontractor is on site, they will want the project manager or the site manager or the logistic manager or the supervisor. They want that person to make sure that physically they're on site. So that's why on my side, I can't not afford not to be on site. I have to be on site. Whether I'm on site for 3 hours or 4 hours, the fact that I'm on site, that's what matters. They see me. But then if I go, then that's all right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on. So, Cod, obviously, I know you've adjusted to a new way of working as a result of the lockdown. You want to just like what's changed for you?
Yeah. So thank you. Yes, the lockdown has been Yeah, it's had its challenges. I think initially for me, so I am a product owner, and I work in like a public sector in the transport industry. And my job, I normally kind of work with some devs. When I say devs, I mean like developers. So we develop apps. So I think within our team, we already kind of established a working kind of relationship in a sense of we did already agree to work from home twice in a week. Now, I'm not really someone that likes working from home. I really like seeing people, being able to connect with people. And I feel in general, my kind of role where I need to make sure things are getting done, checking that things have been done properly or it's been done to the requirement of the actual user or business is really good for me to actually have that physical contact. So even though that we had that two days a week, I was not really doing that working from home. But it just happened that obviously with this COVID-19, when it kind of transpired, we already had like the resources and the tech to start working from home. So what we are currently doing, for instance, is that obviously we're using our laptops, we're using Teams for like virtual meetings. The main challenge really has been, if you could imagine, I'll try to paint a picture. So if you could imagine there's a kind of like a business requirement. Let's say you've come to me to say, oh, you need to build me an app. I want the app to do A, B, and C. Now, when I get that information, I then have to transfer that and speak to my development team for them to understand exactly what your requirements are. So they need to build that. They need to build that app according to your specification. Now, what happens is that when they build the app, then I get my testers. I get testers to kind of test it, and then I'll need to review it to see that whatever that they've built is in accordance to what you've asked for. Now, normally, what would happen at the end of, we call it like a sprint. A sprint is basically like every 2 weeks, we kind of we agree to certain stuff that we're going to work, and every 2 weeks we kind of review it. Now, obviously, the main challenge of that is that we'll normally be in a meeting room. I'll have the team kind of demoing to myself and the business what they've done. And then we'll say, okay, yeah, we're happy with it or we're not happy with it, that kind of stuff. Obviously, that's been a bit challenging. So now I'm having to do it virtually. And so what I'll normally do is I'll get the team to set up like a virtual meeting and they could then talk me through what they've done. I could see how they've tested it and see whether those requirements are right or they're not to accordance. So that in itself has been challenging. But in regards to like the transportation company that I work in, for myself, my building, the actual physical building that we work in has been closed. We've been instructed that no one should go into the office. You only go into the office if you need to pick up a specific resource. So let's say, for instance, you need to pick up, you forgot your laptop before all this happened, you need to go and pick up your laptop. You need some extra stationery or whatever it is that you specifically need. If it's not for that, you've been instructed to work from home. Obviously, it kind of transpired that if you're not in a role, for instance, like myself, as Ali mentioned, if you're not in a role where you could actually virtually work from home, then you have to literally just, I think TfL have introduced like furloughing for staff. So some of our staffs have been furloughed at the moment. I guess it's so it hasn't been that dramatic for me. I think the main challenge for me though is homeschooling. So try to work from home, trying to be in these meetings whilst you're meant to be then teaching like your 6-year-old child about work that has been set for the school. And you could only imagine the attention that this person will require, whilst you're also trying to balance that with trying to speak to people about specific requirements. So that's been the main challenge, and obviously not being able to go to the office. So yeah, I think for me that has been interesting, and I guess going into that challenge a bit regarding my kind of home setup, it's been quite useful having my wife around to assist with that. But obviously, some of the challenges I saw that has been transpiring is that how many actual devices you have in the house. When I say devices, I mean like computers. So for me, I have 2 laptops. My wife has 2 laptops, and then we have a desktop. Now, obviously, we have 3 kids. 2 of them are currently kind of going to school, and all of them have been set this kind of homeschooling, virtual kind of learning stuff. So we've been lucky in a sense that obviously my son has been able to use the desktop, and they're using Microsoft Teams. So they have a virtual kind of classroom starting from morning to 3 o'clock or whatever time that is. And then my daughter also has like Google Classroom, and then one of us has to give over one of our laptops to kind of do that. So I guess I'm not sure whether I'm going around in a kind of different thing, but I could understand that a lot of our listeners that have kids at home might face that challenge of trying to balance work with homeschooling. But not only that as well, it's to do with the resources that they have in the house, because it's not everyone that might have 4 laptops in the house. which one of them has actually broken, really, because one of the kids have broken one of them. So there's only 3 laptops now. I wonder how many we'll have left by the end of this whole Corona kind of social distance.
That's interesting that you say that. In fact, I just wanted to go back on what you were talking about in terms of the measures that you have in place at work. I mean, obviously, from what I understand, you manage a team, don't you?
Yeah, so my position is a bit, I don't necessarily manage a team.
Right.
I manage the work that the team does, if that makes sense. I know it's a bit of an oxymoron, but yeah. If you could imagine, let's say you're a dev, you have your own line manager. But when you come into my team, I'm giving a specific work that I'm saying, Cam, I need you to do A, B, and C. So I only manage the specific work that you do. Obviously, if I'm not happy with your performance, it's something I could speak to your manager about. But I manage the work. I don't manage people. Does that make sense?
And do you think like
it does.
Do you think with the measures in place, they could basically remote working or working virtually could be sustained for a long period of time, especially in your particular work environment?
In the tech industry, before even the lockdown, I was aware of people that were working in other countries for specific firms in the UK. So with them, mostly what they've been using is the virtual meetings and stuff. And I guess moving forward, as with conversations that senior management have had so far, it looks like even if when this self-isolation is lifted, a lot of people within our kind of work that can actually work from home, that might be extended for us. So we might be actually told to actually kind of work from home for a considerable period because we have all the kind of tools to do that at the moment.
And I guess obviously there's still a sense of fear for people who fall into, say, the high risk category, because as I said, whatever risks are here today will still be here in September. It will still be here in October, and so those people that fall into the high risk categories may still be a reluctance to even go into an office to go and speak to anyone.
But that is very interesting though, because I wonder whether all these industries, I wonder what they do about it. So for instance, if you are in a situation like, for instance, Ali, where you physically have to go into that building, then what really happens to your job? I think obviously my company are actually thinking of such things. We have asked the questions. I guess we're in a position where a lot of we can't really hold like the top managers to account because a lot of it's unprecedented. We're all trying to find out what needs to be done or what can be done when all this is going to kind of like come to a halt and stuff like that. So yes, you are right. With this carrying on, there will have to be certain decisions that would have to be made. But at the moment, I feel the waters are a bit murky to make those kind of decisions at the moment because no one really knows how and when this is going to end. But yeah, that would definitely be a challenge for a lot of companies, not even companies, but for individuals as well. Because you might be put in a position where you are being told it's either you come in or you might actually lose your job. So yeah, that will be interesting moving forward, whatever kind of direction is made, or whether that is being dictated to by the government where they might impose or put something in place after the ban has been lifted.
Yeah, Kojo. Very important thing that you raised up. You mentioned about when you do a product, the hard part of it is you can't physically see it. You have to go on a virtual, right?
Yeah.
But in your case, obviously you work in tech. Is this something, because listening to what you've just raised up, is this something that you guys are working towards? That a virtual, you can be at home, you have all the equipment, and then I know you can't physically touch it, but you can have, is it called a neo virtual that it's like a 3D or 4D, and you can actually see everything that has been designed. Am I in the correct term for it?
No, you're not. You're right. I understand where you're coming. I guess for me, the key thing is whether you're signing something off that has not been built to what the requirement is. And I guess for us, it's not that we're building like physical devices. We're not like building iPads or like Android phones or anything like that. We're building apps. So with the
app, I thought it was supposed to be physical.
Oh no. So with the apps, you should be able to virtually kind of demo it. The key thing for us is making sure that the business is part of that, as in whoever you're building it for is part of those kind of virtual review. Because the reason why our work, we do it that way, is to kind of have that constant feedback loop. Feedback loop meaning that if you come to me and I give you, so let's say the example that you gave, where a client comes to you, you give them a quotation of 18 months to finish the work. Now, the idea is that you don't just gather that a requirement and then 18 months you go and you show it to them. You're meant to like constantly keep them advice on the work that you're doing. So what we kind of do is why we have that 2-week kind of breakdown, where every 2 weeks we get the clients to come and see what we've done and for them to actually say whether they're happy with it or not before we move on to the next stage. So for me, that's the most important part, making sure that the clients are still part of that feedback loop and being aware of what is still being developed, even though we are in this kind of like situation that we find ourselves in at the moment.
Yeah, like a review. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Okay, and I wanted to come back to the topics of schools with your children, Coach. But I wanted to touch on Mo's sector first, and then we'll go back to the school thing. So Mo, what's going on?
Hey guys, yeah. No, it's been really interesting hearing like what's been happening in all your different sectors and how everyone's kind of been coping with that. So I mainly work I work for a charity, and the department I work for is support and employability. So we basically help, we try and help the general public in terms of support to getting a new job, or if not, training and upskilling to help them to get a new job. And some of the different contracts we work with target specific demographics of the population. So there are some that are long-term unemployed. There are some which are young people trying to find employment, or it could be certain locations or postcodes or areas where we might get contracted to help find employment. And obviously with this whole self-quarantining, because of, in terms of our frontline staff, that is definitely a big issue in how we would try and support people face to face. So one of the things we have been doing over the past few years anyway is trying to encourage digital inclusion. So basically helping people use technology more, or if they do have finding difficulties in terms of writing their CVs, applications, and just in terms of any computer capabilities for any role or work that they might do. Because in this day and age, most of the work you might do, you're going to have to do some kind of online work or some kind of work online with computers or even tablets or even phones nowadays, which has been incorporated a lot. So on my end, so I kind of help support the teams. We've been basically trying to improve our service to make it more that people can access it online. So this is things like in terms of the documents we might use, because we're contracted, we have to have some kind of document or reporting or database CRM for each person that we do help. So there is the access of having documents completed, things like that, signed, saved, proof of ID, proof of claiming benefits, stuff like that. So changing the whole work style has really been a big challenge in terms of how do we allow clients that we're supporting still get the help from us, but then at the same time us meeting our contractual obligations of in terms of ID, signed documents and things like that without them physically being there. So obviously with some clients this isn't too much of a problem, as a lot of them may have access to their phones, which they could use to take pictures of documents or scan. I know there's quite a lot of scan apps and stuff like that nowadays, sending through stuff or just to a laptop to complete a form and then save it and email it back, or scan and email it back. But this is actually a very big problem in quite a lot of areas where you will get quite a lot of, especially long-term unemployed clients that don't have access to those things and struggle even entertaining or the concept or the idea of having to use a computer and things like that. In a lot of the work that we do have access centres where they can come to access all those resources and use. But obviously at this point in time, all those centres are closed. So there isn't actually any physical form or place where they can go and do those kind of things. So there is the old school fashioned way of simply just talking to them on the phone and filling out as much of the application you can, sending it in the post. Hopefully they receive it in the post. They then fill out their bits and then post it and send it back. Obviously, in terms of service-wise, that does make things a lot more complicated and long. And then there isn't the physical one-to-one support area there. And what you might find in terms of the quality of our services, we generally do try and help people directly and meet their specific needs. And some of those are best done in person, face-to-face, as opposed to on the phone. You do get other challenges that might occur in that aspect. So for me, in terms of working from home, that option was always there available for me to do. So in terms of transition-wise, it isn't really a problem. It's just more kind of putting in place new policies and procedures to support the team so that everyone can work remotely, and how best we can help our clients to be more remote.
Yeah. Oh, go on. Good.
No, I was just going to ask a question. Obviously, during these kind of unprecedented times, I understand, and just correct me if I'm wrong with anything I'm about to say. I understand your work is for like individuals trying to get into the job sector. Is that correct?
No, the job centre is separate. So the job centre, we work alongside them.
Not job centre, job sector, trying to get a job.
Okay, yeah, that's right, yeah.
So in this unprecedented times then, I'm not sure what it is, because I'm not too sure whether there are a lot of companies still employing. So are you kind of seeing a bit of a trajectory around your end regarding the amount of people that you guys are still getting through? Or is it more now because there could be more people unemployed that might need to kind of fix up their CVs or whatever that kind of support that you're giving them? So are you getting more or less? I'm just trying to compare. I'm just trying to say, with this COVID-19 kind of stuff going on, is that leading to you guys getting more clients or less clients? Or what that kind of environment is like at the moment for you?
Yeah, I mean, definitely it has led to us getting more clients. It has led to, in terms of our team and our staff, we have obviously had to update our knowledge in terms of the new government procedures because of it, in terms of how they're moving certain people to universal credit, you see, and how those things are put in place. I must admit, the government has actually made a lot of access to things more complicated than it was before, especially for those that were claiming job seekers allowance, because they're now not allowing people to claim that. They have to claim universal credit. And then in order to claim universal credit, there's all these different forms of hopes and hurdles that you might have to do, which you not necessarily had to kind of do when you were just going for job seekers allowance. So yeah, there's definitely a lot more people looking for work. There's a lot more people that have fallen into unemployment because of what's happened. There has been a lot of increase in terms of retail jobs, but then this isn't necessarily in terms of career paths what a lot of people maybe were planning to go into. And yeah, definitely in terms of the unemployment pool, labour is a lot higher now, and the actual jobs supplies available is lower. So you're going to have a lot more people unemployed than there are jobs available.
Yeah, I guess you're not going to be one of those people unemployed anytime soon, mate. You're coming for you. The rest of us, I might be knocking on your door soon, mate. Jesus, mate. Yeah. Oh my God.
No, don't get it twisted. It can still affect me too, because our contracts can be shut down due to lack of funding, and then there's nothing to support my salary or pay.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah, but Mo, so just to go back, obviously, in terms of so the immediate effect of the crisis, you've switched to working remotely, so obviously on a permanent basis for the meantime. Did you have the option beforehand? I'm pretty sure you did mention that.
So for me, I don't work personally with the frontline staff. I'm more
Right,
on the
okay.
back end at the head office.
Sure.
So with the work that I do and the support that I provide, I can work from home. I have worked from home before. That I've always been provided with a laptop and stuff, so I can working from home is for me wasn't a big transition because it was something that I could do a lot, and I did a lot in terms of I have to go out to different sites throughout the UK, and I should be able to work mobile in that sense.
Sure. And how sustainable do you see this? I mean, obviously, presumably, I assume there have been discussions in the office about how things are going to work going forward in the long term. But I mean, from your perspective, do you think that this is something? I mean, obviously, measures will have to be put in place. Obviously, how sustainable do you see this in the long term, especially like for the service users, for the people that use the clients who use the service, and how they have to adjust to this new practice?
I mean, it's definitely not sustainable. I mean, already our finance department has projected a third loss in revenue, in our yearly revenue, which is a really, really, really big loss, especially when you plan on with budgets throughout the year on how you deliver, because of us being a charity, we're very much delivery orientated. And then if we can't deliver, then we can't really support people. So it's definitely not sustainable if things continue like this in the long term. But with every business, as it is still a business as well as a charity, you try and adapt and see how things can kind of move forward or make it work.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean, for me, I guess one thing that prompted this conversation for me as well was I was on LinkedIn, and someone on my LinkedIn put up a status, and it definitely made me sort of want to speak about this and how the lockdown has affected our working practice. I'm going to read the LinkedIn status. So it says, I resigned on the 1st of April 2020 to start my own law firm. It was a decision delayed for the longest time ever because I was doing well. Thanks to the support from various colleagues, I did very well in 2019 and continue to do well this year. But I'm at the stage of my life where I needed to start something of my own. Many say that it is crazy and suicidal because it is COVID-19 now, unprecedented times. It may be true that these are unprecedented times, but if not now, then when? COVID-19 taught me that a big office was an unnecessary burden. We had to pay rental for an office that we could not access, while mail continued to be directed to that office. I will keep costs low, and clients will pay only for my skills. Clients don't pay my landlord. I will be working from home 100% since COVID-19 has taught me how to. I will run a paperless practice and use a practice management software instead of hiring a secretary. I would be able to do more pro bono cases that I am passionate about. Perhaps I could save more lives. These pro bono clients deserve the same quality as representation that a millionaire gets easily. And now that particular quote, I mean, it was profound for me in the sense that, I mean, it touched on an interesting point in that they're going to run a virtual law firm, and you know, the added burden and cost of having an office will be, I think it's going to have to be a massive consideration going forward. I mean, even from my perspective, in my working practices, I'm a freelancer and I'm attached to a firm as a consultant. And with that firm, I get a retainer fee every month. And it was only a few weeks ago, you know, I was speaking to the head of the firm. He's saying, well, whilst the lockdown is in place and the courts aren't even open, well, the courts aren't open to people to attend on bail, they've seen a decrease in their profits, and as a result, my retainer fee's been cut by 50%. And they've said to me, well, that arrangement can only go on, you know, for so long as the lockdown's in place for. But I think going forward, we're not entirely sure where things are going to go, because I mean, it's not entirely sure. As I said, with the courts, there's no particular plan in place as to how they're going to manage with social distancing and people attending courts. One thing I will say is that there's a massive concern about the cleanliness of the courts, and that's been a concern of mine since I've started doing this job. You know, I've been carrying to courts for about 5 years, and one thing I will say is the cleanliness is not up to a good standard, and that's a feeling that's shared mutually amongst other lawyers as well, and other people that use the courts. But moving to like law firms and saying that my retainer fee's been cut, one thing I will say is like a lot of small firms that that have been set up is like they can only deal with this lockdown for so long. As I know, like solicitors that practice property law, they've been affected because property transactions have effectively been put on hold. Obviously, the government have advised people, if you were looking to buy properties, then you shouldn't be going forward with that. And on top of that, mortgage companies aren't even lending now anyway. So firms that say specialize in property law and don't have massive cash reserves, they could go out of business within the next 4 or 5 months because they're not going to be able to survive. And obviously firms that may have been on the brink of collapse will certainly collapse at this point. A lot of the work I do is legal aid work, so it's publicly funded work, and it's not the best paid area of law. And so as a result, firms that were probably surviving on monthly payments from the legal aid agency might not be able to survive the next 3-4 months. They may not be able to weather the storm. As I said, my retainer's been cut, but it may very well be cut further. I'm not entirely sure when things will start to pick up, and so that's the situation I'm faced with.
I think. Sure, just go on, Ali. Do you want to think? I'm just going to add to that.
Yeah. I hear your echo, and I do apologize. My deep sympathy for that side. On that, it's just I think me and you was even talking about this virtual remote working, Cam. So just to add into that is it's unfortunate what is happening because it even affecting parenting, paternity leave woman as well, because on my missus as well, she hopefully will go back within this year to work, which is like around summertime, June. So but she's got this there's this thing, I don't know if you guys are aware of it. It's kind of like it's a startup date, which is you go in for like 10 days and then slowly 10 days, and then you slowly see how the work is and if you can cope or not. So she's trying to push that forward, and obviously I think they're going to accept it. But her practice, because she works in an architectural environment, which is kind of similar to my kind of environment where I work. So she's trying to push forward and work 2 days, hopefully at home, and 2 days in the office. But the practice itself is a company that does not want to move forward. They've kind of got like an old agenda about their practice and how they want to compose themselves. So within all of this, what is going on now, personally thinking, I just think that whether or not it's a company that's been on for how many years or small businesses has been on for 5 years, I think it's an eye awakening. You know what I mean? I think what is happening now is actually have to be an eye awakening, and companies have to adapt the same way the humanity of us humans are moving forward. We want to evolve. I think firms need to do.
So I think really just to add to what you guys have said already, I think right now the way I see it is innovate or die, innit? That's what's going to happen to a lot of these companies. Companies that are too stubborn to change their working practices or their communication tools might not exist. Obviously, like for instance, just to add to what you're saying, Cam, and yeah, I guess these are difficult times for a lot of people, man. So my kind of like I don't know what word to use, but you're in our prayers, as my mum would say, man. Even though I don't go to church, like, hey, I'm trying to find some. What I'm just trying to say is that even for my firm, they are looking at contractors, and that's one thing I'm trying to protect my kind of team against, because I know the minute that we start getting rid of contractors, there's a lot of work that we have in the pipeline that we'll not be able to do. But I think one thing I just wanted to touch on quickly is the impact to that kind of like sector that I'm in. Transportation, when it comes to buses, there's a decrease of 85%. trains, there's been like a decrease of 90%, which has been done intentionally with the whole kind of helping the NHS cope with like people that kind of using the transportation system, which then kind of has a massive impact on TFL's budget. So it's only like last week that the TFL went to the government to try to get some sort of like loan or some sort of grant so that we'll be able to keep going at the end of this crisis. And obviously, I think maybe because of the sector that I'm in, that's something that the government might be more inclined. Whereas with other sectors, they might not actually get that benefit because it's not like a public service that people need to use. But just touching back on what you mentioned regarding the courts and even that, what you shared with us with that linking page, I feel like kudos to that person. And it's excellent that people are using this because there's a silver lining with every situation. So it's excellent that people are actually using this to actually propel themselves or to find the actual positives and the benefits in this. And I know that the courts in Nigeria, in Lagos, for instance, will start, I was just reading an article here on the Pulse.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah, the Lagos State High Court, they're going to start virtual hearings from Monday. And that's what I mean by innovate or die. You know, you have to find ways to keep moving. But just going back on the question that you asked, look at me, man, I'm being a politician. I'm not answering direct questions regarding the homeschooling. I think a lot of people that might be in kind of people that have kids, there are challenges with the homeschooling. So I guess the first challenge will be that as a parent, these parents might not have the same kind of education as some of the teachers might have. So even though there might be resources available to you, how do they actually sit that child down to actually show them where they need to go to find these resources? They might actually not have that kind of capability to do that. The second thing I would say is to do with the actual resource that you actually need in order to access these materials in the first place. Now, as I said, it depends on how many kind of computers or laptops you have in your house. And it depends whether you have been furloughed, whether you're unemployed, or whether you still need to start working from home as to how this kind of will be distributed within the house. So in my situation where we have 3 kids and myself, when I work, I normally need 2 screens. So my 2 laptops, I need my 2 laptops because I need to access, I have so many windows open that I'm trying to do. They say men cannot multitask, but I'm trying to multitask at the same time that I really need those 2 windows. So it means that my laptops are out the window, meaning I don't really want to give my laptops to my kid. And then obviously it falls on my missus. My missus is trying to work from home because she's an admin for one of the churches in our area. So she's trying to work from home. And I guess for her, she might be able to use one laptop. But what she's had to do is actually bring her desktop from her office to the house because they didn't have like a virtual kind of storage system. So if you can imagine, all your files are on this hard drive that you need to actually move around everywhere, which I was like, okay, the church definitely needs to think about having some sort of virtual learning and virtual hard drive. But yeah, it just goes back to the challenges of the children in the house. So as I was saying, if the parent does not have the know-how to actually sit the children down, if they do not have the time because they might be working, or if they don't have those resources in their house, then it's a big challenge for these households in how they actually do that homeschooling and balance that with work, home, life balance, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, for me to add into that, my missus obviously has 3 siblings as well. We kind of encounter the same situation as well. So obviously, as you're aware, the education system has they're giving more workload actually prior to when they're in school. So we had to get each one of them, we have to get them a laptop, if you can imagine. So that is like a budget that you don't have, if you know what I mean. And for me, I will believe that how the educational system, if they are implementing this, why are they not providing a laptop? Because you have disadvantaged children that do not have the opportunity, you know what I mean? Like that, for example, like you're saying, coach, that you are fortunate you've got this equipment, you can provide it. But some disadvantaged family now do not have this. They don't have this, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's a bit like...
Yeah, no, sorry, I was going to touch on some of because obviously I'm a school governor for our specific school, and I'm aware of some of the stuff that Southwark have kind of put in place for these disadvantaged children and stuff. Okay. So with that, and this is the stuff where you find out when you are in these kind of situations where people actually rely on free school meals in the schools to actually keep their family moving. So I know such people that have to rely on that. They have extended the school vouchers, kind of there's like an extension period, and they've extended it to people that did not normally fit into that kind of bracket. So for instance, they've extended it to families that have no recourse to public funds. So such families at the moment could actually go to the schools and pick up vouchers for like Tesco, for Asda, for kind of food shopping because they don't have that available. So one of the key things, yeah, there are, yeah. You can, I could send you an article where people could actually do that. All the schools within Southwark, as I'm aware of, they'll be given, and the government has actually put in place free vouchers for parents that might need that. As I said, it's been extended to families that have no recourse for public funds, depending on, there's a criteria that you need to obviously fit within that in order to get access to those school vouchers. Also, the school that my daughter goes to, they can provide a parent a laptop if that need be arises. So if you go to the school and you need a laptop, they'll provide you a laptop to actually go through this period until this whole kind of thing kind of goes down. And I know that there are some foundations that could provide funding for laptops. One of those foundations is the new Common Collect Foundation, where they will give grants for the parent to actually acquire laptops as well. So there are tools in place. There are certain things in place. I know the government are trying their best as well, and the schools are definitely giving out a lot of these kind of vouchers to kind of assist. But as I said, though, for these parents that are in this position, so for instance, if you were to apply for a grant or to apply for a laptop, how long is that process end to end anyway? If the schools are giving out laptops, how many families can they actually provide these laptops to? These laptops might be resources that they have in the school already, but can that extend to all these disadvantaged families? So there are still challenges within that. And then if you are a bit, do you get what I mean? Yeah, so there are kind of challenges even within those kind of amenities that are being kind of...
Just before we close up on that point, obviously, that I get that there's those challenges are definitely in place, and what I notice is that I guess some of those challenges do affect the parents quite a bit. But what do you think about the effect on the children? Because obviously they're sort of switched from one position to another, where they were in school and now they're cooped up at home virtually all day. And is there like a challenge in trying to get them engaged in the work online? Because obviously, more than just getting education at school, it's a social experience too. So it's those sort of things to keep them engaged.
Mate, that's an excellent question. And I think as school governors, that's one thing that when we did have a conversation with the head teachers and stuff, obviously they are more thinking about the kind of education of the child. But I must say though, in my specific school, they have definitely thought about the welfare, the mental challenges the children have. In their house is very difficult because, as I said, my daughter is used to having her friends around. She's used to a certain structure when it comes to education. Whereas now, I'll need to read what the actual kind of questions are, and she's meant to sit there to do it. And then every so often, after I finish a meeting, I'm looking at her and she's turning around or she's running off to play. And I'm like, what are you doing? And even though I'm trying to get her to go back to work, I definitely know the challenges that she's facing. So it's a bit dumb. It's like I'm trying to let you do something that I know that you're finding it challenging because I'm finding it challenging. I know what has changed for you. So yeah, it's a bit, I guess, as time goes on, they get a bit more used to what's expected of them. Now, one thing that we do in our household is that we make them try to operate from Monday to Friday as if they're going to school. So they wake up, brush their teeth, 9 o'clock, you're on your laptop. 9 o'clock, you've started doing your work. You have your break time at 10:30. Then we have lunch at 1 o'clock. You go back to work and then you finish at 3 o'clock. Then you have your playtime. So we're trying to do this. And even though I know it's difficult, even though we make it a bit loose, we're just trying to give them the sense of structure in their life, that regardless of what's going on in your life, you need to keep things moving. But yeah, in regards to the attention span, them sitting down, sometimes obviously my little one who hasn't started school yet, a lot of the times is really difficult. And yes, you could judge me, I'm a bad parent, whatever people want to label, but a lot of the times you have to like put certain stuff on YouTube to kind of entertain him whilst you finish your meeting, whilst we assist my daughter, whilst we try to assist my son, whilst we try to catch a break ourselves. And it's very difficult in the house. But for me, I always see these things as challenges, innit? And over time, as we get used to it, things will become better. But yeah, for my little one, I'm really kind of concerned regarding the amount of playtime that he has in front of like the TV and computers and stuff as well, because we are finding it really, really difficult to kind of keep all of them kind of engaged, entertained, and have fun at the same time. Whilst you as a parent, you have all these kind of commitments that you're trying to do as well.
Would you not add into that as well, space-wise? Space is another downfall, right?
Oh, bro, where do you guys want me? You guys want me to cry on this podcast or something? Like, Jesus,
No.
what are you doing to me? No, so,
No,
and it's funny because I had a conversation with one of my friends that actually lives in the flat as well. And we said the only time that we're able to actually catch some air is when we stick our head in the window. Because obviously we don't have a balcony or a garden. So you can imagine not having a balcony or a garden. You have 3 kids in the house and all these other factors that I've kind of mentioned. And we actually wait into the house as well. We don't actually have the space that we kind of need. So yeah, there are a lot of challenges. But one thing I always say to people though, that sometimes always look at the benefits of a specific situation. So even though it's really hard, myself and my wife and my kids, we're not sitting here feeling sorry for ourselves. We're just trying to do the most that we can given the situation. So it's always that whole kind of thing, glass half full, glass half empty. You never really hear me complaining because I always see it as glass half full rather than glass half empty, because then it makes your mental kind of challenge. It gives you more impetus to actually kind of get through these kind of challenges that we all kind of face. But I'm just trying to say
I like that. You're right.
the grass is not green, you know, but we all have to try to find ways to deal with it because that's a given. That's all we can do. But yeah, challenges differ for different people. But I guess for me, there's also challenges that kind of have to work through at the moment.
Sure. No, definitely. Thanks for sharing that, Kodj. Sort of certainly an interesting insight into how I guess you've adjusted to sort of working remotely, but at the same time, the responsibility of having your children at home full time, and I guess it's having to balance the two, which certainly presents unique challenges in itself, given that it's an unprecedented situation, one which you've never faced before.
Yeah, and let me just add, I think my company has done really well because, for instance, my line manager, they've given us, because with our hours, everything that we do in a day, we have to bill it to a specific kind of project code. The project code is a budget, basically. So they've kind of given us a budget to say that, look, if you need to take some time off to kind of be with your children, maybe work only 3 days in a week, you could do that and all those kind of stuff. My company also has given us like opportunity to maybe have like a 12-week period off if we have kind of challenges in the household that we need to kind of have some time away to kind of deal with that. So I do have support. My company has actually been quite supportive regarding this kind of current challenges that we kind of face ourselves in. And I know some people don't have that, but that's been quite comforting for me.
Okay, but do you still get paid? Do you still get paid like in the 4 hours?
Yeah, 100%.
Regardless.
We get paid 4 hours. And even our staff, some of the staff members that have been furloughed are still getting 100% of their pay because the company makes up 20%. So I must say our company so far has treated us quite well on that.
Cool. So just to sort of like get to like the final part of this conversation, so I wanted to just like kind of have like a little brainstorming session of like opportunities I guess people can look at going forward once the lockdown has eased. I mean, even with the easing of the lockdown, obviously certain businesses will open and others it may take a while to reopen. But like I was having this conversation with my wife and I was saying like even once they ease restrictions in certain places, like going to the barbershop, I don't even know if I feel safe going into a barbershop. Like the barbershop I go into is completely cramped. And so what that did is it just prompted me to think about just businesses also within the community that sort of provide, they provide a service for those, that live within the community and sort of, and push the community along. They're going to be affected, drastically as well as a result of the social distancing, and probably not even so much that, just maybe even like that there will still be a certain level of fear in place going forward.
I think I'll just touch on this quickly before anyone else comes in. I think obviously some of the challenges, because I work in transportation kind of industry, you could see that the buses now, you can only enter from the back. I'm not sure if anyone's taking a bus.
I've seen that that's been happening. I've seen that, yeah.
And this is due to a lot of the bus drivers that were kind of had COVID-19, and then it was felt within the industry that they are not being protected and all those kind of stuff. But obviously with that, there's a loss of revenue because currently there isn't any kind of like a, what is it called? What's the oyster kind of station that you're able to tap in depending on the bus that you're using if you're coming through the back. So I know that we are actively looking at putting some oyster stations at the back of those buses. So if someone enters through the back door, they're still able to tap up. Because when it comes to revenue-wise, TfL stands to lose a lot of money. And also when we go into like the whole underground, and we all know how the underground system is like, in a sense that try to kind of establish some sort of self-isolation, not self-isolation, but social distancing on the actual carriages, that is going to be a monumental kind of thing to do. And this is one thing that it will be upon TfL to try to do, in a sense that you need to try to give people the assurance that they could still use your public services. And within those public services, you're still able to kind of do some sort of social distancing. Now, I know it's something that managers are thinking about, but if you ask me how this is going to be done, I really don't know. And I also know that there are conversations around how we could use tech to support like the public and also our station staff. So there are some stuff that we're thinking about around queues at a station. How can we get that information out to people so that they are aware that there are some queuing? So if you do come in, it might take you 20 minutes to get through to that station. All those kind of stuff, really. So there are a lot of things, as you've mentioned, even when you think about cinemas, like, are people just going to be going back to cinemas like nothing happened? Are cinemas going to be doing 2 seats apart? All these kind of stuff is challenges that a lot of companies have to think about, whether they impose some sort of self-isolation. And if they do not impose self-isolation, whether people are comfortable to actually use their services regarding the fear that is going around with COVID-19, contracting it and all these kind of stuff.
No, definitely. Mo, what's good?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, no, I think it's definitely something that we should all be thinking about and definitely take into consideration. I know with some people, they're kind of happy to continue as normal. And then with some people, it is a really big concern, especially even just going back to work. I know even in my company, we were anticipating that some people, even once everything is back to normal, may not even be comfortable getting on public transport again just to get into work, that they might still want to extend things and just see how things kind of...
Please tell them to go on public transport, please.
Yeah, but these are genuine concerns that people have, and you can kind of understand where some people are coming from, especially those that have been personally affected by those family members that have been lost due to the whole COVID-19.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's we're in an unusual time, and we're having to all just adjust to new ways of working and new ways of doing things. But as you pointed out, Coach, I think it is about seeing there's always a silver lining. And by me reading that LinkedIn status, that's what I was trying to point out, that there is a silver lining. You've got to see that, okay, this is how things were working before, right? Okay, going forward, this is how I've got to adjust in order for things to work this way. That's all it simply is. It's simply finding a new way of working and thinking in terms of going forward. And so for me, obviously, I appreciate that there is, that status was about someone who's running a law firm, and they were saying they're going to run it completely paperless. And you can do that because there are things you can do in terms of you can see clients on a video link. You don't have to see them physically in person. In terms of doing work that can be done online, and you can save files in a cloud system as well. So there are resources whereby you can have digital files. You don't have to have physical files in place. But as I said, I totally understand and appreciate that it's not like that for all other businesses. Obviously, I know now you're seeing an influx of people doing more things on, say, YouTube, online, in terms of businesses, and trying to push that forward, because that seems to be the way forward at this particular stage in terms of being able to create some form of revenue for yourself.
To add to what your question was, personally, I just wanted to highlight this properly. There is funding from the government for small businesses. However, what I find significant is the BAM, people of color, that are not getting this access into the small businesses. And where I meant by the terms of access is that it's not publicized out there. The grant is there for a loan or whatsoever. As you mentioned, you mentioned, oh, for now you're speaking to your wife and to going back to your barbers. Is that something that you're going to do? Because obviously, is it the fear, or is it the fact that you don't want to go out there now because obviously for your situation? So what I meant by the grant is like small business like that for people of color are going to usually be affected because there is a grant in place, but the grant in place is not evenly spreading according to how it should. And if there is there a link for small businesses to know about this grant? Because this grant, it seems like it is there, but is it by words by mouth, or is the government actually announced it? Or because I've read an article that where they're finding it very difficult to try and active on this grant, and they don't know the sources or how to get it, but they do know there's a grant there. They do know that the government has brought up the grant, but it's not for people of color.
From that, I must say that, yeah, I think one thing that you did mention though, I think real estate, regarding having a physical kind of premise for your business, I think a lot of businesses are going to think about that moving forward. Because for me, I must say, a lot of the times when people talk about working from home, sometimes it was linked to unproductivity regarding output from that specific person that's working from home. Because it could be thought that instead of you working, you might be washing your clothes, you might be watching some Netflix or whatever not. And then there's no way of someone physically actually seeing that you're actually doing the job that you're meant to be doing. So you might have some people that when they start working from home, they might send numerous emails so that people are aware that they're actually working and stuff like that. But then I think when companies have been forced into this situation where you have to innovate or die, then they will think about their actual expenditure. You have to think about your variable costs. So if you have a fixed asset, which is a building, then you might have to think about maybe different departments that can actually work from home, and maybe have to think about the cost savings that you might have at the end of that, which I then think, I'm not sure how that will then transpire to the big economy regarding all these physical asset buildings that are sitting around, and they actually need people to fill those kind of buildings. I wonder what that would happen at the back of this.
Yeah, but I get your I hear your echo, Kojo, because to add to that as well, it's like companies has to trust the employees to make sure that to allow that the fact that they can provide the workload, they can finish it and complete it, regardless of you're at home, you are washing the dishes or doing washing your laundry. That's not the point. The point is, as long as you trust your employee, you can do the job. Maybe there's a contract that has to embedded into that to say, no, if you're working from home, make sure that from Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, you are getting the result that we require from you, something like that. But it's not about being at home. It's a human nature. When you're at home, you are bound to do other things and still work. You know what I mean? It's like it's like some people at work here, they take tea, like they take tea break and smoke so many times. Yeah. If you add that time, right, for even a day or all the week, that time you can wash the dishes, you can watch your laundry, you can even watch Netflix, right? But they're still doing the job. Do you understand what I'm trying to say though?
No, so I totally understand. I was just using that to make a point that before, companies had this feeling that working from home might be linked to unproductive kind of workers. But at the moment, when you get into that position where you need to allow people to work from home, then you are able to see the benefits of working from home. And those benefits then lead you to make medium to long-term decisions that might save your company a bit more money. As Cam kind of mentioned with that example. I was just trying to make that point using that, not necessarily that companies should not trust their employees, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I hear your point. That's why Google and are doing like that's why Google in that kind of firm, they're different because their approach to work is not necessarily have to sit in the office. Their approach to work is an open space within the department. You can work remotely within the office. You can be wherever you are as long as you're still providing. That's how Google approach it. Their working environment, and I think that is the next way forward that every firm needs to be able to adapt into, regardless of small businesses or regardless of huge large company. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think that's what it is.
I think this has been a really interesting conversation. It's quite productive actually, because I feel like it's definitely gave me a bit more of an insight into, I guess, sectors that you lot work in, and interesting to sort of hear how you're adjusting and changing, your working practices as a result of the new landscape that we've entered. It is uncertain going forward. We're not sure how things will pan out with working remotely. It's all going to be trial and error to see where things do work and where things don't work. And this will be certainly a new normal for us. I think my worry here is how it will affect, in my industry, how it will affect certain firms, especially like small firms going forward. I don't think a lot of them have the cash reserves to survive the next 6 months. And in fact, that's one article in the log that said that a lot of small firms said he won't be able to survive the next 6 months. So it will be interesting to see what support is put in place for them. Obviously, on top of that, it's like if they can't survive, then taking out a loan or any other sort of thing is not necessarily going to help them, because that's still money in which they've got to pay back. So all that's going to do is put them into further debt. So it will be a case of, making sort of hard decisions about the necessity of certain things within the mechanism of the business in order for it to keep going. A question of whether you need certain offices, even certain members of staff in order to help the business run effectively. You might need to streamline certain things in order to remain profitable. What I will say is there certainly is a silver lining in this situation, and I think with the wealth of information you've got online, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook, there's so many opportunities out there in order for us to sort of adjust to this new way of working. I mean, if this happened in the 90s, I don't know what we would have done, because we're nowhere, we did not have anywhere near the level of technology that we have in this particular day and age. So if there was, not to say I'm glad it happened, but if there were ever a time for this to happen, now probably is the best time, where we've got all these things in place in order for us to adjust to working remotely.
For my wrapping up, how I kind of picture stuff, every adversity you have to see as an opportunity. Right now, there's an opportunity for you to improve yourself. And regarding everything that's happening, is outside of your control. Things that are outside your control is very hard to try to have any influence over. The things that you have direct influence over is the stuff that's in your control. So what are some of the stuff that is in your control? You could learn a new language, learn how to play a guitar. You could learn all sorts of different things. You could actually prep yourself to set yourself up an online kind of business, depending on your thought trail or depending on some of the things that you think could happen. You could start looking to investing in like stocks. You could look into investing in cryptocurrency, things that could actually make you money. You could look to actually extend your services online. So there are a lot of opportunities here as well in this adversity. So the only thing I'd just like to say to people is that we all know that there's a lot of uncertainty, all those kind of uncertainty regarding what's going to happen after lockdown is lifted, all that kind of stuff. No one in the world could actually tell you what's going to happen. What you can tell yourself is what you're going to do in this kind of adversity. You have control over that, what you do with yourself. So that's what I'll just leave with people, that try to improve yourself, try to work on yourself, try to look out for opportunities within this kind of issue or the pandemic that we're kind of having at the moment. and love, and let's not fear people at the end of this. Hopefully we still are quite loving and we're still giving hugs at the back of all this.
For me, to sum it up of what this whole situation is happening is that try not to have fear of your surrounding or what is happening now. Yeah, it's uncertainty that it has happened, as what all the other members have just stated. If it did happen in the 90s, I think it would have been a scramble. And take the opportunity now when you're more relaxed. I think now is like the time that we are more relaxed. Obviously, it's uncertainty for some people are still not having afford to have money, having an income that's coming to them. But at this moment, your family are very important. Surround yourself with family, trying to get to know your spouse or your families in general, or perhaps even your friend, you know. Just check up on them, calling up on them more often now, you know, just having conversation. You don't have to be 10 minutes, it can be more than an hour. And then, so, because some people, it's not, even though we are working from home remotely, some people, it can still be, some people don't like the isolation, if you know what I mean. They like to be in an office or talk to people or feel like as if they are around with people and trying to just get on with the day. But anyway, from this moving forward now, for me in the future, I see a positive insight. The reason why I'm mentioning this is that it's an eye-opening for everyone, especially for an African side of it as well. African continent, they have taken this on board, and they will be taking this on board because it's time now for Africa to evolve, in a sense of for them to get into what the Western world or what the rest of the world are doing now. And it's something that the government, individual of the African continent, they need to work into that as well. And for the Europeans and for the rest of the world, I think it's a good thing now because it's allowing government or people, individuals to understand that things like this can happen. And when it does happen, it's not about panic. It's about actually uniting, working together and seeing the brighter future. There is a brighter future because even for myself, I have not sat down and closed my legs. I've been prompt doing a lot of things. So I've taken advantage out of this for myself. And yeah, it's a disguise in a blessing, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I think.
Cool, go ahead, Mo.
Yeah, I mean, I do echo all the sentiments everyone's expressed so far, which really good. Just to say something different, I would challenge everyone to use this opportunity to actually give people a call that you may not actually necessarily chat to or haven't spoken to in a long time. You literally have all the technology available, WhatsApp, all these new video ones, or even a normal call, because I'm not sure everybody would actually want to be showing their face up on their phone, because it might not be appropriate. But yeah, definitely. And if there are some people that don't answer, it's because they don't want to talk to you. All right. So yeah, that's just how I'll leave things so far.
That's the end of this discussion. If you want to catch us on social media, you can find us on Instagram at the LDN Perspective. We're also on Twitter at the LDN Perspective as well. If you have any questions or any comments that you'd like to make or any topics you'd like us to discuss in future, please email us at the LDNperspective@gmail.com. So until next time, that's us.
Perspectives, different views, one voice.